Camilla is furious, and the reason might just shake the palace to its core. In a moment no one saw coming, Princess Anne revealed King Charles's final wish, and it doesn't favor the new queen. Was this a betrayal from inside the royal family, or a promise made in secret? What Anne said has changed everything, and the fallout is only beginning. Stay with us, because this truth could reshape the monarchy in ways no one expected. A barbecue unlike any other. At first glance, it was just another Balmoral gathering, a royal tradition cloaked in simplicity. A family barbecue, far from London's watchful eye, meant to be casual and relaxed. The royal family had arrived in their most unassuming attire. Chinos, breezy dresses, sensible flats, and smiles that seemed, at least for a moment, unburdened by duty. The hills of Scotland stood quiet and unassuming, offering rare stillness for a family used to being watched from every angle. But that day, beneath the surface of grilled salmon and polite laughter, something simmered far more potent than the coals. Former royal butler Grant Harold once described these Balmoral barbecues as relaxed, where the king himself might wear a simple shirt, where laughter floated in the breeze and tradition took a gentle back seat. But this time, that sense of peace was an illusion. What unfolded in the margins of that event would reverberate through the palace gates. It began quietly. No toasts, no announcements. Just a hushed exchange between a brother and sister. King Charles, pale, tired, and contemplative, called Princess Anne aside. They stood away from the others by a winding garden path, where the air smelled faintly of heather and smoke. What he whispered to her was not ceremonial or strategic. It was deeply personal. A confession from a monarch. But more importantly, a son. A final request, born not of power, but of clarity. And Anne listened, not just as a sister, but as the steel-hearted guardian of the crown's oldest truths. That moment, passed between them like a secret torch, would soon ignite a fire neither could have fully anticipated. A fire that would reach the heart of Queen Camilla's reign, and cast doubt on everything that had been carefully rebuilt in the years following Diana's death. Because when the king shared his final wish, it wasn't only an act of trust. It was a spark that would threaten the entire royal order. The king's whispered confession. They stood under the soft shadow of a birch tree, the sounds of clinking glasses and laughter fading into the distance. For once, there were no cameras, no press officers, no advisors, just King Charles and his sister, Princess Anne, alone as they rarely are, in the quiet of Balmoral's wooded hush. His face, drawn and lined with fatigue, bore the weight of more than age or illness. It was the expression of a man who knew his time was no longer measured in years, but in responsibilities he could no longer carry. And that's when he said it. "Promise me, Anne, that the monarchy stays true." It was not a command. It was a plea. According to insiders, Charles spoke from the heart, unfiltered by ceremony. He made it clear. Camilla, though loved and supported, should not rule in his absence. Not fully, not alone. His final wish was for balance, for the institution to remain anchored in legacy, not emotion. It was a desire shaped by his mother's values and haunted by the public's enduring affection for Diana. Anne said nothing in return at first, but her silence was not hesitation, it was understanding. She'd known it, too, felt the shift, seen Camilla's quiet climb through the palace ranks. And now, with her brother's confession, she carried more than a secret. She carried an obligation. That moment wasn't documented, but it didn't need to be. the ripple effect had already begun. Because for Anne, this wasn't just a family matter. It was the future of the crown. And for Camilla, it would soon feel like betrayal disguised as tradition. The Queen's silent influence. Even in death, Queen Elizabeth II's voice lingers like a guiding wind behind the throne. She ruled with an iron will wrapped in soft-spoken elegance, and her views on legacy were never loud, but they were never unclear. Among her most carefully guarded convictions was the one about Camilla, that she should remain queen consort, not queen. It wasn't animosity, it was strategy, a protective measure for the monarchy's future, and for the memory of the woman the public still mourns, Princess Diana. This wish wasn't shouted from palace balconies. It lived in private conversations, subtle affirmations, and quiet nods to tradition. And it was Princess Anne, more than anyone, who absorbed its meaning like doctrine. Where others saw protocol, Anne saw preservation. She understood that the Queen's caution wasn't rooted in resentment toward Camilla, but in respect for the public's pain, for Diana's legacy, and for the institution's fragile trust. Now, with Charles's own words echoing this belief, that wish no longer lives in memory alone. It lives in resistance. Anne has never been one for grand gestures. Her rebellion is quiet, but unwavering. She carries her mother's expectations like a royal oath, unspoken but never broken. In her eyes, Queen Elizabeth's view wasn't optional. It was final. And as Camilla stepped further into the spotlight, Anne could feel that silent vow begin to tremble. It was not enough for her to honor it privately. She would need to defend it publicly, even if it meant fracturing the fragile peace within the royal family. Because when the Queen spoke her final wish, she passed on more than an opinion. She passed on a test. And Anne was the only one willing to take it. Keeper of the crown's truth. Some royals wear their duty like a costume. For Princess Anne, it's a second skin. She has never needed applause or sympathy. She doesn't chase headlines or bask in public adoration. Her strength lies in service, the kind that doesn't end when the cameras turn off. And that's why Charles chose her. Because he knew that if anyone could carry a painful truth, unshaken by politics or pressure, it was Anne. For decades, she has been the monarchy's most steadfast figure, unapologetically blunt, fiercely loyal. When others indulged in vanity or escape, Anne pressed on, year after year, engagement after engagement, unbothered by image or privilege. To the public, she's the unsung hero. To the family, she's the anchor. And now, she is the keeper of the king's final wish. Anne sees the growing shift in palace dynamics. Camilla, no longer content with ceremonial gestures, has begun to mold her role, quietly, deliberately. Anne doesn't resent her presence. She resents the power it represents. Power that was never meant to exist without constraint. Power that defies the promise made by both the Queen and the King. She knows that speaking out will come at a cost, that every move she makes will be scrutinized. But silence is no longer an option. She was entrusted with something sacred. And when history looks back on this moment, it may not remember the banquets or the speeches. It will remember that one woman dared to say, "This is not what was promised." Anne isn't just defending tradition, she's defending truth. Camilla's quiet ascent to power. It didn't happen overnight. It never does. Camilla's rise within the royal family has been slow, strategic, and steeped in patience. From scandalized outsider to queen consort, her transformation has been one of the most controversial evolutions in modern monarchy. But now, her presence isn't just symbolic, it's substantial. She doesn't simply accompany the king, she advises him, represents him, and increasingly speaks in ways that suggest a role far beyond the one she was once promised. She has built quiet alliances within the palace, gained favor among senior aides, and slowly shifted public sentiment through years of low-profile charity work and public humility. But not everyone is convinced, especially not Anne. To her, Camilla's influence is not earned, it's imposed. It comes at the cost of promises made, legacies protected, and lines that should not be crossed. Anne watches as roles once shaped by bloodline and legacy are reshaped by convenience and popularity. And in that shift, she sees danger, not just to her own position, but to the monarchy's very soul. Camilla may not be grabbing power with arrogance, but to Anne, that makes it even more insidious. Because ambition, when disguised as humility, is far harder to challenge. But the quiet climb is nearing its peak. And what Camilla may not yet realize is that the higher she rises, the harder the fall becomes, especially when the king's own sister is holding the very secret that could bring it all crashing down. A private dinner turns confrontational. It was meant to be an intimate evening, a small royal dinner, just weeks after King Charles's illness became known within private circles. The mood was restrained but not solemn. Silverware clinked, laughter came in cautious bursts, and conversations tiptoed around the obvious tension in the room. But for Princess Anne, this wasn't a time for subtlety. It was a moment for clarity. According to palace insiders, Anne had waited long enough. Her brother's whispered confession still weighed heavily on her. His wish, that Camilla not rule unchallenged after his passing, wasn't a suggestion to be ignored. And yet, here sat Camilla, increasingly confident in her title, surrounded by deference and control that seemed to grow by the week. So Anne said what no one else dared. Her words, as always, were measured but unmistakable. "The crown wasn't meant to pass through you," she reportedly told Camilla. No raised voice, no theatrical flourish, just the raw edge of truth. The room fell silent. Even in a family accustomed to secrets, that moment hit like a thunderclap. Guests paused, some frozen mid-sip, others avoiding eye contact. Camilla, reportedly caught off guard, remained still, her expression unreadable. But those who know her well say it didn't take long for the heat to rise behind her composed exterior. The dinner resumed mechanically, but the energy had shifted. A fault line had cracked open beneath the table, and no amount of royal protocol could plaster it over. Anne's confrontation wasn't just personal, it was public, even in private. It was her declaration that she would not let history be rewritten quietly. And it marked the moment the family stopped pretending everything was fine. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was the calm before Camilla struck back. Camilla's rage, behind closed doors. Behind every palace door lies a different truth. And on that night, after Anne's confrontation, Camilla's truth was fury. Gone was the composed public figure. Gone was the woman who had spent years rebuilding her image. Behind closed doors, the queen consort was livid. According to those close to her, Camilla stormed away from the dinner in disbelief. Her words to aides were sharp, emotional, and raw. "She's undermining me in front of the family." It wasn't just the insult that hurt, It was the implication that even after all these years, after all her efforts, she still didn't belong. Camilla had endured decades of public backlash, media cruelty, and private sacrifice. She had weathered the scorn of the people, and more painfully, the lingering shadow of Princess Diana. But now, with the crown finally hers, she was being told she had gone too far. The worst part? It wasn't the press saying it. It was Anne. Anne, the tireless royal workhorse. Anne, the Queen's unyielding daughter, who had always held the moral high ground within the family. Camilla knew that a challenge from her wasn't gossip, it was gospel. If Anne questioned her position, others would follow. So Camilla demanded a response. She insisted King Charles publicly reaffirm her role, his support, spoken loudly and clearly. But Charles, already weakened by illness and emotion, gave her none. He said nothing. No statement was issued. No cameras were summoned. His silence, whether by hesitation or exhaustion, felt like a betrayal. And for Camilla, that was the deepest wound of all. She had fought to be part of this family. But in that moment, she realized something devastating. She was still on the outside, and Anne held the key to everything. The final wish that rocked the palace. When Princess Anne finally spoke of King Charles's final wish, it wasn't a press conference or formal decree. It happened quietly, within a tight inner circle of family, those who needed to know. But the effect was immediate. The air changed. She revealed that Charles had expressed a deep, personal desire, that Camilla would not rule in his place should he become incapacitated or pass. His plan, if not legally binding, was morally unmistakable. He wanted the monarchy to begin transitioning toward Prince William. Camilla, though respected, was never meant to be the face of the future. The revelation was devastating for Camilla, and perhaps even for Charles himself. Camilla felt blindsided, betrayed not only by Anne, but by the very man who had once fought so fiercely to make her queen. Her years of restraint, of playing the long game, now looked like a house built on sand. One confession, one whispered promise, had upended her throne before she even fully sat upon it. The senior royals, already strained by Charles's health and the shifting public mood, were left reeling. If the king's own sister was now publicly holding him to account, what did that say about their confidence in Camilla's leadership? And worse, if William were to be fast-tracked, what role, if any, would Camilla retain? The institution thrives on structure. But Anne's revelation shattered that structure with a single sentence. A final wish, once meant to stay hidden, now pulsed at the heart of royal decision-making. It wasn't just about titles anymore. It was about power and legacy, and whether the monarchy could survive both. The silent observers. As the palace trembled under the weight of Anne's revelation, two figures remained outwardly composed: Prince William and Princess Kate. The future king and queen, present at the dinner, knew better than anyone that moments like this required silence over sentiment. And yet, even silence can speak volumes. William reportedly said little that evening, but his expression, measured and unreadable, betrayed the weight he now carried. Camilla's future, once a private concern, had now become his responsibility. And the question was no longer theoretical. It was real, tangible, looming. Kate, ever the picture of diplomacy, maintained grace. But observers noted her stiffness. A glance here, a hesitation there. Her closeness to Anne is no secret, and the Queen herself had once praised Kate for her quiet strength and discernment. Now, that strength would be tested in the court of public opinion. Behind the scenes, aides began preparing for potential fallout. If Charles were to step back or decline in health, William's involvement would have to increase. Fast. And if Anne was right, if this was truly Charles's final wish, then Camilla's reign would be both temporary and tightly contained. William did not have to voice his stance. Not yet. His silence was his signal. He understood the stakes. He knew the weight of the moment. And he would act not for palace politics, but for the promise of stability. In that room, one generation stepped back, and another quietly prepared to step forward. Camilla's history of rivalries. Camilla has spent her royal life navigating tension, most of it behind perfectly polite smiles. But the rivalries that have marked her journey aren't just personal, they're generational. And with every new chapter, the past has come back to haunt her. First came Diana, the woman she could never escape. Then Anne, who saw through the performance. And now Kate, the embodiment of everything Camilla was never allowed to be, effortlessly beloved. Camilla's dynamic with Anne is cold and unyielding, two powerful women on opposite sides of royal tradition. But with Kate, the clash is quieter, more psychological. Camilla once doubted Kate's ability to withstand royal life. Now, Kate has not only endured it, she's mastered it. The public adores Kate in a way Camilla has always longed for, but never truly attained. And while Camilla has earned a place within the royal structure, Kate has earned something far rarer: public trust. These rivalries aren't about status anymore. They're about influence. And in the monarchy, influence is everything. With Anne challenging her authority and Kate quietly commanding admiration, Camilla's role feels increasingly like a crown on shifting ground. The palace remains silent, but the women at its center are no longer pretending. But heir's dilemma. Prince William has always known that leadership would one day fall to him. But he didn't expect the transition to be this complicated, this emotional. As Anne's revelation spread through the royal inner circle, William found himself standing on the knife's edge between duty and diplomacy. Privately, he's understood the unspoken discomfort around Camilla's growing role. Publicly, he's remained neutral, careful not to fan flames. But now, neutrality is no longer an option. His father's health is uncertain. His aunt has gone public with the king's final wish. And Camilla, increasingly seen as overstepping, remains unrepentant. William is said to agree, quietly, with Anne's stance. He respects Camilla for her support of his father, but he's never forgotten the heartbreak she represents. More than anything, he believes the monarchy must preserve the values that Queen Elizabeth embodied: duty, restraint, and trust. And that means following the king's wish, not challenging it. Yet William knows one wrong move could shatter the fragile balance within the family. A public rift between him and Camilla would ripple across headlines, parliaments, and commonwealths. His dilemma isn't just about titles. It's about timing, legacy, and the pressure of becoming the steady hand on the wheel before the ship sinks. And as the world watches in quiet suspense, one thing is certain: the next move belongs to William. Whether he confirms Anne's claim or sidesteps it, his decision will define the monarchy's next chapter. And Camilla knows it. A kingdom divided. For centuries, the British monarchy has relied on unity as its armor. Public alignment, private disagreements, and the shared belief that the institution came before the individual. But now, that armor is cracking. Anne's defiance has fractured the family's internal dynamic. Camilla's silent fury has only widened the rift. And Charles's declining presence has left a leadership vacuum no one is quite ready to fill. What was once a whisper has become a reality. Two royal courts now exist under one crown. One led by tradition, embodied by Anne, and quietly supported by William and Kate. The other shaped by survival, by Camilla's desire to preserve her place in history, even as that place begins to shift beneath her feet. Within the palace, staff and aides feel the divide too. Loyalties are split. Orders are second-guessed. Even the most routine engagements have taken on a layer of unease. The air in Buckingham Palace is colder, less certain, and beneath every event, there is the looming question: who is really in charge? The monarchy is no longer the seamless institution it once was. It is now a house of quiet contention, each wing guarded by a different ideology, each hallway echoing with unspoken judgment. The Queen is gone. The King is weakened. And the royal family stands on a precipice. One wrong step, and the fall may be one from which they can never recover. The legacy of a dying king. He spent his life waiting, decades spent in the wings, preparing to rule a nation. But now, as King Charles III feels his body betray him, he finds himself focused not on reigning, but on remembering and on letting go. Charles has always been torn between personal desire and royal duty. He chose Camilla out of love, against all odds. But in his final reflections, he seems to recognize the complexity of that choice. His whispered confession to Anne wasn't just a moment of vulnerability. It was a reckoning, a realization that perhaps the institution needed to come before the heart. He is said to worry about Camilla's expanding influence and how the public would react if she were to rule without limits. He's seen the polls, he's read the letters, and most of all, he's watched the subtle discontent within his own family. He knows Anne will not be swayed. He sees William's quiet resolve. And so, in what may be his final act of humility, Charles has stepped back, letting his wish be spoken not through decree, but through his sister's voice. He hasn't made it official, but he's made it known. For a man who spent so long waiting for the crown, it is a poetic irony. His reign may not be remembered for what he built, but for what he let go. And in doing so, Charles may have given the monarchy its last chance to stay intact. Public opinion turns once more. Beyond the palace walls, the public watches and judges. Camilla's image, once cautiously accepted, is again under scrutiny. The whispers have grown louder. Online debates rage. News outlets are revisiting the question many thought was long resolved. Should Camilla ever have become queen at all? Recent polls show a shift. The public, weary from scandal and spectacle, increasingly sides with Anne and William. Camilla's efforts, however genuine, are again overshadowed by the memory of Diana and the legacy of Queen Elizabeth II. Even her supporters feel the tension, unsure whether her growing power aligns with the will of the people or only the desires of the past. The phrase Queen Consort is back in the headlines, not as a title, but as a reminder. A boundary, one that many feel has been quietly crossed. It's not a formal referendum, but it feels like one. Every social media post, every televised appearance, every royal poll is now a vote on Camilla's place in the future of the monarchy. And behind it all, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The people may have tolerated her, but they never truly embraced her. And now they might be ready to see her reign end before it ever truly began. What happens when duty collides with ambition? The royal family has faced scandals, tragedies, and reckonings before, but few moments have been as quietly explosive as this. One whispered wish, one bold confrontation, and a monarchy now teetering between tradition and reinvention. Princess Anne's promise wasn't just to her brother. It was to the memory of their mother, and to the institution she dedicated her life to. Camilla, once an outsider, now finds herself questioned from within, her reign marked not by public scandal, but by private resistance. The crown she fought so hard to wear is no longer secure. It is conditional, contested. And then there's William. He stands between two futures, one where he honors the final wishes of a dying king and a duty-bound aunt, and another where peace is kept by maintaining the status quo. But peace in this family has always come at a price. The monarchy is not just a lineage, it's a living symbol, one that must evolve, yet remain rooted in something real. The question now is simple. Who gets to decide what that real is? Duty demands restraint. Ambition demands action. And somewhere between those two forces, the future of the British crown is being quietly rewritten. This isn't just the end of a chapter. It may be the beginning of a new reign, born not from ceremony, but from conflict. And the echoes of that choice will be heard for generations. Princess Anne's revelation has sparked a royal storm, and now the future of the crown feels more uncertain than ever. What would you do in William's place? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for the next royal reveal.